Jonah Allen, welcome to the Action and Ambition podcast.
Hello, hello.
Yeah. Now, if I understand correctly, you are a visual artist and photographer focused on the link between water and light currently, being a success in a non traditional business. You do realize that, right?
Yeah, I live a pretty incredible life where I get to align my passion with a career. So basically, yeah, I'm always chasing waves and the relationship between water and light on a daily basis. So
Uh,
it's a pretty incredible thing to do that.
Before we got started, you mentioned you're about 100 steps away from the beach. Is that part of the current project you're working on, or is that just been a lifestyle choice?
No, it's a lifestyle choice. I grew up landlocked in Atlanta, Georgia, and always kind of felt, not at home there, kind of disconnected. And moved down to the beach, and it enables me to work because the beach is where I work. It's where I make images, and yeah, it enables me to surf and just live a great lifestyle.
Got it. Do you prefer being addressed as like a visual artist or a photographer? Because I'm not sure if you do painting and also do photography.
Yeah, it's a great question. I do other mediums, but my sole focus is making photographic images. So the way I kind of like to is a kind of a slight shift in the way I think about it, but I call myself a photographic artist as opposed to a photographer because nowadays everyone's a photographer. We all have iPhones, and so we're bombarded every single day with images, advertisements and social media and whatnot. So we see, thousands of images every single day. So to me, a photographic artist is somebody who um, puts themselves in really interesting places and situations to make really intentful photographs, um, as opposed to a photographer. Like a photographer traditionally is someone who's hired by a client to make images for that client, but I don't do that. I make the images I want to make, and then I sell them. People collect them as pieces of art. Does that make sense?
Y-
Distinction?
Yeah, yeah, no, and in fact, it kind of ties to the next point I wanted to bring up. Apparently, you've been spending the last 3 years in helicopters and drones over the Northwest Florida coast for a book that you're working on.
Yeah, so I've been, as you mentioned, spending on about 3 years in this project. The title of the book is going to be called "Where Waters Meet," and it's basically focusing on the confluence of these two waters meeting. There's a geological phenomenon called a coastal dune-like outfall, which is basically like a lake that pours out into the ocean, and so it's kind of visually intoxicating in my eyes. So I've been hanging out of helicopters, making images of these two bodies of water, um, making a book on that subject matter.
Okay, and the cool thing was I saw when I was taking a look at your website to do some research that you're actually giving away a piece of art. Now, is that part of this book that's coming up, or is this from a former work?
That specific piece, I believe, I'd have to double check, but I think that's, it's going to be in the book. But that is just, kind of a marketing thing.
Okay, okay, so Outfall number 69, right? I think that's what it was called. Which is cool because that's valued at almost $2,000 and you're giving that away. That's Is that how you generate revenue in your business? Is it specifically on your pieces or do you do other things to sort of generate revenue?
No, my main source of revenue is um, making large format prints, which people collect in their homes.
Okay.
So
Yeah. And so how do you usually generate like more clients and things of that nature? Because again, as I mentioned, this is a non-traditional business, and that's kind of what we're looking to review here in the podcast. And it's just interesting that you've been able to make a living. Is this something that you kind of fell into, or how did you get the business side of it? Because as you said, many people are photographers, quote unquote, taking pictures, but not too many make a real living out of it. How did you get into that? How did you bridge that gap?
yeah, it's definitely something that's not easy. But anything worthwhile is not easy. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I started making images probably when I'm 25 or 26 now. I started making images like maybe 10 years ago, and I never thought I'd want to be a quote unquote artist or photographer. I fell into it because I saw an opportunity where I lived. And you know, basically it's taken me about a solid 3 years to get to a point where I'm actually like, generating a significant income, multiple six figures a year. And um It's I don't have a gallery. So traditionally in the art world, um, you have a middleman or you have an art gallery, and so they take 50% if they make a sale. They take 50% of it, and I do operate with some art galleries, but most of my sales are generated through myself, and I don't even have my own art gallery. I just kind of do it all online, and so in order to do that, just really it's about marketing and having systems in place that enable you to kind of scale that marketing.
That's I'm so glad you brought that up because that's the exact 2 points I wanted to cross with you and pick your brain on. Number one is the fact that technology has definitely removed the middleman, and where you might see technology driving creative businesses in the future. And then the other is marketing in particular, especially as a visual artist, and how you go about creating that brand and what kind of tactics you use. Could you cover that?
Absolutely, yeah. So, excuse me. Right now, I mean, it is a golden opportunity for creatives. We have never lived in a time where we've had more access um, to get our artwork or your message or your value proposition, whatever it is in business, to as many people, the right people, as possible. Through social media and through websites now, if you can find your audience, you can make a living off of that audience, depending on what it is for you. Um, so, it's taken a solid amount of time, but it's not something as an artist that just kind of happens overnight. It's something, it's a slow kind of grind and a slow build. And this is not my, line of thinking. I forget where I heard this, but, in marketing, you have seeds, nets, and spears. So, you have to plant a lot of seeds that will eventually sprout, whether it's referrals or just doing, not exactly sure what comes to mind right now, but planting seeds, having nets, so a net is, your message to a lot of people. So that's, social media, that's email marketing, and then spears, is targeted outreach to specific people of influence who you want to work with or who want your dream 100 basically.
Oh, okay. Dream 100. Is there any names on your Dream 100 list that you've actually been able to achieve and meet with and work with?
Not off the top of my head, that's something in the works. Yeah.
Is there anyone in particular you look up to in general that sort of inspired the work that you do?
Um, I draw my inspiration from lots of sources. Music, I love music. There's one composer named Olafur Arnalds. He's an Icelandic composer, and his music is very ethereal, and I try to make images that kind of have that ethereal quality. Um, Photographers, there's a photographic artist named Edward Bertinsky. He's from Canada, and yeah, his work is absolutely incredible. Um, yeah, those are the two that come to the top of my mind recently.
Okay. Do you find that it's essential to sort of be able to know about people who have done the work who sort of paved the way for photographers and in particular creative photographers such as yourself who are actually artistically making choices? Is it important to know about the predecessors in order to be a success in the business, or do you feel that it may potentially just be one of those things where you could go off and do something and not even know who built the way for you forward?
I think it's both. Yes, it's important. In art or anything, it's important to know who came before you and know the history behind it, so you have the context and understanding about the concepts that relate to the work or the culture. Related to what your focus is. But at the same time, it's also great not to follow in someone's footsteps, so you can kind of um, think of a way to disrupt it. You know what I mean? If you're always following in someone's footsteps, then you're not really maybe innovating.
Right.
If you're
Okay. And have there been any things that you sort of came across as roadblocks on your way to success, which I'm sure there have been, and what would you say is the biggest one, and how did you really get over that hurdle?
That's funny that you asked that. I just have my biggest roadblock right now currently. And I was negotiating a lease to open up my own space, my own gallery. Um, and the reason behind that is just so I have firstly a space where I can create marketing content and videos and images of my work in a space, a place that I can call my own, but also a place that I can drive people to, drive physical traffic to. Um, but that negotiation kind of fell through. So I'm now at a point where in order to scale my, I want, my goal is to scale at least my business, 500,000 a year and over 1 million the next couple of years. Um, I feel like it's much easier to do with a physical retail gallery, but not having a space, not being reliant on that crutch. If I'm able to do that digitally, with digital marketing, then in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, by the time I do get a physical space, it'll just kind of be like throwing fuel to the fire.
Mm. And what is it that makes it harder for creative visual artists to actually secure a building? Is it a matter of like, oh, we need to see your paperwork and like, what do the finances look like, or for like as far as approval and co-signing for credit, or what is the actual hurdle, if you don't mind, or is that something more personal?
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about it too much,
No
but
worries.
it's basically I just really I don't want to wasn't ready to spend 100 grand a year for
Right.
this specific space.
Sure.
I think I'll definitely will be in the future. It's just like that swallowing that number at this place right now. It's like I think if I just dump 100 grand a year instead into my marketing, what's working right now, I think I'll get a way higher return if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That's exactly the kind of answer I was looking for, is being able to determine what the best move is. Because in business, as I'm sure, that exact mentality must have been responsible for how you even got started to become somebody who gets paid to do what they do, as opposed to someone who is a hobbyist. Do you remember the turning point for you where you suddenly realized, wait a minute, I can actually make a living doing this?
I don't think there was ever a specific turning point. It's just kind of a gradual kind of things I planted. Like I said, like a lot of seeds, and the seeds just kind of slowly started sprouting.
Yeah, I looked at your Instagram. Is that where you spend most of your time, by the way, on Instagram? Because it looked amazing. There's so many pieces of art. Just the whole feed looks insane.
Thanks. Yeah, no, Instagram is it's a marketing vehicle. It's a vehicle for me to connect with people and potential clients and collectors. So yeah, I spend time on Instagram, but I'd say the most of my time is spent, if I'm working my business, most of my time is spent, you know, doing virtual appointments or doing in-person appointments, actually connecting with potential leads or clients.
Is there? Do you? Excuse me. Do you approach that the way like a real estate person would, a real estate agent looking for buyers and sellers? Like, who is your perfect client?
Yeah, it's I some basically, high net worth individuals are my target clients in coastal towns, because my work is very coastal based. And all the luxury high end real estate firms, their target client is, it's the same person. So I definitely approach it like a real estate agent would, but at the same time, in terms of like outreach, it's more kind of, instead of outbound, it's mostly inbound.
Sure, sure. A big part of business really is the whole networking aspect. Is there anything you do to network at all?
Yeah, definitely. I connect with all the luxury real estate firms in the area. I have an assistant whose basically full time job is to do outreach to network with people. So yeah, that's kind of what I focus on.
That's huge. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask you, do you run your entire studio by yourself? Do you have more than just an assistant, or like, how does that work? How do you go about building a team? Because that's not easy.
Yeah, it's something I'm in the process of doing. Yeah, I just currently have one employee right now, one assistant, and she just kind of does the tasks that it's I guess it's my time is best spent making images and creating images,
Hmm.
and then connecting with potential collectors, spending time with them. So everything else besides that, I try to have my assistant do.
Sure. No, that's definitely the smart thing to do. Do you use like any specific systems? Is it just emails, texts, or do you have like project management softwares, things of that nature?
Yeah, the last year, something that really helped me. It's crazy because you know I was just kind of hobbling along. Not I want to say hobbling along. I was doing fine, um, you know, last year, but this year, really ever since COVID, like I t- timing of COVID, so it actually increased demand for art because people are stuck in their homes. So I saw the opportunity, kind of happening in real time. Like we're kind of right before it. And I just kind of started doubling down or tripling on the marketing efforts that I was doing. And in combination with that, I really systematized my business at the same time. So those two factors combined, it just like took off. It's been crazy. Like I'm up like 400% from last year. Um,
So you can
so yeah,
see
it's,
the difference between having a system in place versus as more most creative professionals do tend to have that lackadaisical sort of like as I'm inspired, and you decided to go against the grain yet again, proving why you're in business as opposed to a hobbyist. Do you feel like it was really the systems that took you to that place during this, especially right now?
I definitely think it was a huge factor. And I wouldn't say I don't know the percentage wise, but to attribute it, but it was definitely a significant factor. So the systems that I use, I try to, if something can be eliminated, then I eliminate it. If something can be automated, I try to automate it with a tool called Zapier. It's just like a cloud based application to communicate between different applications. Um, and then if I can't automate it, I try to delegate it to my assistant. And then what's left for me to do are the things that are worth my time.
Oh, that's huge, man. I would say if there was somebody sitting on the couch right now watching this and they're afraid to take the step towards their dream, what is something you would say to them, being the person that you are, going against the grain and acting against really a creative's intuition when the time calls for it?
Yeah, I kind of think backwards. So like decide what your end or your goal is for what the lifestyle you want to live. Because um, for me, I knew that I kind of fell into art. It was not, I actually wanted to be a musician. That's what I really wanted to do first. But I kind of fell into making images as a significant like living um, by kind of chance. I just saw in the area an opportunity that there's some other artists in this area and the Southeast United States who are doing really well, um, but in a very large geographical radius, and there's nobody focusing on large scale photography, like this tiny little niche. And there were some people doing it, but they weren't doing it in a really tasteful way. That's subjective, obviously. But so I just started doing it, and over the last 3 years, it's just kind of taken off like wildfire. And but to get back to your initial question, um, I I realized that I was able to align my career with a passion and live a lifestyle that I love, where I can go surfing when there's waves. We don't have waves that often since I'm in the Gulf, but when there's waves, I surf. Phone on to airplane mode. I cancel appointments, um, and I can do that because I've kind of designed my life around the ocean and the weather. And so I would say to any creative or any person, decide what kind of lifestyle you want to live, how you want to structure your days, what you want to do each day, how much time you want to have with your loved ones, and time devoted to your health and time devoted to your hobbies and your friends and family. And then once you kind of know the kind of lifestyle you want to live, just set goals to work towards that and kind of work backwards. Um, if you're in a creative field, then you have to treat it like a discipline, like just like it's a practice. Making images is a practice, like yoga or like lifting weights or running, or you know it's just a practice. You have to show up every single day until you kind of hone in on your niche and your kind of aesthetic. And then once you have an established like aesthetic and like a niche, you got to just test the market and make sure it's proven to work. And if it works, then just start marketing the shit out of it and see where that takes you. Yeah,
Man,
that's what I'd say.
no, that's huge, man. If I heard that, I'd definitely get a move on from the couch. And I guess to some closing thoughts here. Number one, there's this quote I want to get your reaction on, given that you're actually a business abled creative. There's a quote I found from a Forbes article, no, actually, Entrepreneur Magazine article. It says, fine art in today's world tends to be looked at as an investment, and its value is determined by that it's essentially a business model that lives on and has more or less always been the case since the olden days of patrons and artists. Um, specifically, wait, oh, my apologies. There you go. My bad. Let me correct this. So, art today is a $50 billion industry globally, and it is non-standardized, and its pricing is opaque, and the industry is unregulated. So the above factors are essential attributes for any investment asset. And the lack of these attributes makes the art industry susceptible to manipulation. In the olden days, these handicaps didn't matter, as art was purchased predominantly for direct consumption. You bought the painting because you liked it, you hung it up on the living room, and that was it. Like, you admired it. And now the fact that painting had signaling values, implying you could always showcase it to your friends, is important. But it wasn't yet an asset for investment. How have things changed today? And the predominant factor that drives the sales of artwork seems to be its investment value and its forecasted value in the future. Given that you're an artist that's making a living doing this and providing beautiful artwork for people's homes, high net worth individuals, do you more or less agree with this statement? Do you find anything that you disagree with, like the idea of the artist who sells out? Because if you're a part of the culture, you tend not to have money, right? The starving artist thing. And then if you have money, they don't want to involve you in the culture. It's the reason why I bring this quote up.
Yeah. So there, I mean, think about any industry, there are so many different facets and tiny little niches to any, industry. And the art industry, like you said, it's a giant, giant industry and it's unregulated. So, yeah, I mean, so people, there's, at the end of the day, there's a bunch of reasons why people collect art. One could be for investment purposes, like you just mentioned. Another could be purely decoration. One could make someone feel a certain emotion, and it just gives them an emotion. They like that emotion, so they collect the piece of art. There's a lot of different reasons why people collect. So, while like for instance myself, people who are artists who go to the secondary market usually, um, art is doesn't become really a huge asset where it's looked at just in terms of, from a financial perspective. um, it doesn't really enter that realm until it hits the secondary market. The secondary market is just like, you know um, it's going up for auction. So Sotheby's or Christie's, it's a large auction house that's going to auction off the piece. I am not at that point yet, so people don't collect my art because of that reason. It still can be an asset. It's still an asset in their mind because it's giving them an emotion that they can feel, that they can share with their loved ones and the people who come to their home. Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then just the other point, the difference between an artist who believes, oh, I don't want to sell out so that I can be part of the culture and that whole thing, or the artists who are making a living and then are ostracized from the culture for making a living. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it all boils down to intent. If you're, there's nothing wrong with making a living doing what you love and making lots of money at it. Like there's nothing inherently wrong with that, or quote unquote selling out. But for me, all kind of goes back to your mission of why you're doing what you're doing. For me, it's on the surface level. It's kind of, I just kind of touched on it, but when I'm out in the landscape, um, and I'm making images, it's a selfish thing. I get to experience these incredible moments in nature that make me feel certain emotions. And so I get to capture those emotions and I get to share them with other people. So um, if a piece of art can give someone an emotion in their home or their friends or their family, then that piece of art has done its job. But on a kind of deeper level, you can't really get people to care about something unless they experience it firsthand. So if my artwork can inspire someone to go out in the landscape or the ocean and feel what I felt when I was there, then they might just care about the future of it. So that's kind of my mission, and on a surface and a deeper level. So going back to what you said, I think it all goes back to intent. And if you're making art f- just to make money, then you probably burn out because you don't have the passion to keep going. But if you're making work or you're in business because you have a passion for it, and just a side effect is you make a great living while doing it, then I think um, that'll be much more fulfilling.
Huge, huge. And a thought to close out. Like I said earlier, a lot of business is networking. Are there any people in particular you're looking to meet? Some shout outs out there, maybe specific types of people, a specific person that you'd love to meet to help take what you're doing to the next level?
That's a lovely question. Let me ponder it for a moment.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, well, the first person that comes to mind is I'd love to meet Elton John. Elton John not only is, a musician who's gotten to live a life where he gets to align his passion with a very fruitful career, but he also happens to be one of the largest photography collectors in the world. So
Really?
I'd love to meet Elton and, have a coffee with him or something like that.
That's huge. I didn't even know he collected art, like photography like that. Uh, how did you find that out?
I don't actually,
Well,
don't,
you're a musician,
I
right?
think
So
it,
I guess you know his music, you look up his history, and yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, man. The red carpet is out for you, man. You've gone ahead and given us a lot of things to think about in terms of what it means to be a visual artist. But the red carpet's out for you here to direct anybody towards anything you want to talk about, whatever it may be.
yeah, yeah,
Social
totally.
media.
Yeah, totally. You can check out my work at jonahAllen.com. So it's JONAHALLEN. And you can find me on Instagram at Jonah Allen Studio. So I'm working on a book. I've been working on it for the last few years. I'm about to start pre-selling it in about a few weeks. So look out for it there.
All right, Jonah. Thank you so much for stopping by, man.
Thank you.
Cool. So that'll be the episode. How'd you feel about it? Were there any things that you wish we would have covered? Anything like that?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I love just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
Did I throw you off with any questions? I mean, I did my best to keep it, legit.
no, no. I mean, I'm happy. I think that's what imperfections and unexpected things. That's what makes life interesting. So, um, yeah,
No, awesome,
yeah,
man. So I'll make sure to follow up and get you a copy of whatever this is, or at least show you where it's living,
yeah.
get
Please
you a
do.
snippet or whatever. And I'll send you an email so you can let me know if there's anything you need. I try to connect with you on LinkedIn too, just in case, whatever it may
Cool. Okay.
be. If you
Yeah.
can't get a hold of Andrew, you can get a hold of me. At the end of the day, it all goes back to him.
Okay.
I'm here on behalf of him. But man, I gotta
Awesome.
say, it's been a pleasure meeting you, man. I wish you much success on what you're doing. It sounds amazing, and it's definitely not a path that I've ever lived. So it was cool to vicariously live through you and hear about what you've been doing.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time and pleasure to meet you as well.
Yeah, man. All right, man. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.